Hey folks, the Field and Garden Podcast is honored to be partnering with the Growing for Market magazine. They have been publishing practical ideas and information for direct market flower and vegetable growers for over 31 years. All the articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. The magazine is still on the same mission as when the Flower Farmer book author Lynn Basinski founded this magazine back in 1992 to connect growers with the best ideas from other growers. There is dedicated flower content in every magazine, a decade's worth of back issues, and over 1,600 archived articles from writers like Aaron Benzenkane, Gretel Adams, Pamela and Frank Arnowski, and Jonathan and Megan Lease, all available on the website. With 10 new issues every year available on paper, digital, or both, you're guaranteed to find something to fine-tune your farm in growing for market. So if you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stands, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or you just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of local farming. And I have a special offer for you. Use the coupon code WORKSHOP to get 25% off any subscription to the original Farmer to Farmer magazine at growingformarket.com. Good morning, friends. It is Lisa Mason Ziegler coming to you today with another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. And thank you so much for joining me here. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I know that you have lots of choices, and, I appreciate it when you choose us, because that's what we're here for, is to be there for folks in a way that helps them in their daily walk of whether you are growing a little cutting garden in your backyard, or if you're a budding flower farmer or a seasoned flower farmer looking for a little inspiration and empowerment. We are just glad you chose us. So today, I find myself, I go through the same process over and over again, y'all. It doesn't get any easier after 25 years of being in business as in the flower farming or related business. You just find that you fall into different potholes. And so that led me today to talk about the topic of the big picture. And the big picture is really hard for some of us to really kind of keep in focus. I know it is for me, especially if you fall into potholes. Whether the potholes, there are so many potholes available, y'all, that it's hard to not fall in head first. And so I thought we would look at this big picture thought in two different areas. One for me is in planting a garden in the farm, the whole farming part of the big picture. And then for those of us that are in business, starting a business, thinking about starting a business, the kind of same version, but just looking at it from just purely the business side of things, not worrying about weeds and what you're going to plant, all about the other rigmarole that comes along with that. So let's just first start thinking about what are we going to plant. It's deep, y'all. Where are you going to put it? Where are you going to locate the garden? There's so many things to consider. And what happens to me, I would like to say that it doesn't happen to me as much today as it did 25 years ago. But some of these things, I just skip over them because I haven't given them enough real consideration. And so I just think, that really doesn't matter, right? We just brush it aside and think, that won't bother us. So that's kind of where I tend to start. And this was really forward in my mind yesterday. Y'all, things keep changing here at the Gardener's Workshop. That I have a potential really big project on the horizon. We're in Teeterville over it. And if that comes to life, I need to totally change and update my garden plan for the rest of this, season. But what if I don't? And, that's the story of most of our lives, is we are constantly having little monkey wrenches thrown into the scene. And so it makes planning pretty interesting. So I am in the mode. So yesterday I was sitting down to think, okay, I'm going with plan A, that plan I've had in my mind since January of how this was all going to fall out. And in all honesty, I will tell you that I had not drilled down on the details yet, like how many of these do we need to seed start? Where are they going to be planted? Where is that group of beds going to be? Where do they fit in the rotation, which is a natural evolution on my farm because of the way that I plant in blocks of beds at different recipes. A recipe for me is like what I plant in the fall, the cool season hardy annuals. That's a recipe. Those are the things that I typically plant in the fall every year. It changes up a little bit. Then there's another recipe that I plant in very early spring. Then there's the first warm season tender annual recipe. Those are the warm season annuals that I don't go all in. I plant enough of them to make a significant contribution to our business at whatever state we're in. But I realize that if the spring weather does not cooperate, and when has it cooperated, y'all, for a long time, right? That if we plant them early, hoop and cover them, they either come out smelling like a rosebud or they struggle. So I plant early, but I don't invest all early, right? So that's a recipe. Then there's the first really big, very warm season tender annual planting. That is undoubtedly the planting that carries us through the summer, where some of the things, and I know I'm going to get a lot of messages about this, which are those and what are they? Y'all, it 100% varies from your growing environment and your growing skill. So how this works for me does not mean this is how it's going to work for you. So I am always vague about specifics on that for that reason. I do not want to lead anyone astray. So each one of these planting times that I historically plant on, in my mind, I have a recipe is what I call it. And that's a mix of whatever plants in whatever colors, because I consider the colors as to when they're going to be blooming. I don't plant fall colors early in spring because they bloom in the middle of summer and nobody is interested in that gorgeous burgundy typically in the middle of the summer. That's a fall time. So what really happens for many of us, and it used to happen to me, is they don't take a step back at this time of the year. We are in mid-April, tax days in just a couple of days, y'all. And many of us, as I used to, have so many more plantings than they have designated space. So they start filling up their overflow space, better known as where your future successions are going to go, instead of like what we do now. I mean, we always start a lot more seeds than what we have space for, but we do that in an effort to ensure that we have enough high quality, good looking plants to plant. We chuck the puny guys or we set them aside in case something happens. And in fact, this year, that really helped us out with straw flowers. We got a late cold snap. They weren't the straw flowers and the stock weren't covered, and both of them are very early spring planters for me. We don't fall plant them. They don't take our winter cold like a champ. Anyway, we lost some. They didn't actually die. They just looked terrible. But we had backup plants to plug in. What you have to resist is planting all those leftover plants unless you truly have space. But most of us don't, because if you step back and look at the big picture, where is your next recipe going? Where's your midsummer recipe going? Where's your late summer? If you plant all those, not everybody plants all those. It depends on where you are in the world and what seasons you have. So you got to step back and consider everything. And here's the other thing that I am really just overjoyed with all the messaging and comments that I'm receiving about a couple of podcasts that Rhonda and I have done. And I will actually put them in the show notes. I'm sorry I didn't look to see which episodes they were. Rhonda and I have started doing some podcasts that we're calling Bug Talk. And it's about introducing many of you into this whole world of all we seem to think about are the pests, y'all. Y'all, there are more beneficial creatures. Those are creatures that help us eliminate the pests. There are more good guys than there are bad guys, but we focus on that 1% of bad guys, and we allow that to drive the car of how we take care of things. And if you just take your foot off the pedal, step back, stop using all chemical intervention. No, y'all, that wasn't a record. That was me that got stuck on that. Because I'm telling you, we don't even use organic pesticides on this farm. It is more than just not using chemicals, but that's for another discussion, right? But we are loving hearing from folks how they had no idea how the whole natural world works. The world was made perfect, y'all. And it's when we intervene with pesticides that breaks that chain up. And then if we give nature a hand instead of fussing with it, how things change. That should be a part of your big 30,000 foot view. How do you work with this? How do you do that? My book, Vegetables Love Flowers, is really all, that's an underlying message, y'all, of using flowers to really invite the good guys in. And it just so happens that having a cut flower in your veggie patch is a great way to do that. So there's so much to the big picture, y'all. You can think about how you're going to have a consistent supply, which is all about succession planting, which means if you fill up all your space in early spring, you're in a mess come midsummer. And then how are you going to get all the work done? That's the other part of this big picture look. And I'll talk more about that. Let's talk about it with the garden. I will tell you that anytime I'm going to do a project, add a bed, do something differently, or I'm just thinking about planting my garden, what's the first thing that comes in my mind? How am I going to maintain that? How am I going to keep the pathway under control? Weekly is what I'm talking about. How can I sell it? Is that something my customers would clamor for? Or is it something I'm going to have to educate them about? You know? I mean, these are all big picture thoughts. And then for me, most people don't believe this, but truly the first thing I think of when I'm building or thinking of building a new bed or a new area or planting something is, how are we going to tear that down? Tear down is essential to success, friends. If you can tear down a bed quick and easily, that means you can flip it, meaning you can get another crop in it. That means you won't put it off and allow weeds to grow up in it, which makes the problem bigger and bigger and taking you longer. Totally and completely big picture thinking. You got to think about this stuff. So let's talk about business, big picture thinking. Holy cow, does this save me? Does this, for me, the thing I think of that Steve and I both, my husband Steve also owns a big family business along with his siblings. His dad started it back in 1969. And, we on a regular basis discuss, why are we doing this? What's our point? To keep it on the front of our hopper, to keep it in the front of our forefront of our mind. And something that's really important to us is, first off, both of us love what we do. Other people seem to think that we just work really, really hard, and it really does look like really, really hard work to them because it's not their passion. Steve loves what he does every day as much as I do. And I'm not saying it's all, rosebuds and cupcakes. But that's how business is, y'all. I mean, when you go into business, you have to understand that a big part of your job as a business owner is being a fire extinguisher. Being a fire extinguisher is a pretty, it's a roller coaster. It's a urgent situation that needs quick thinking, and that's part of what draws Steve and I. We're just problem solvers, and we absolutely love it. But we also see the big picture. Part of the big picture for us is creating a place and a way for us to step away from our businesses at, every week, where we don't work on Sundays. That is a day of rest. We go to church, we spend time with family. Of course, there's emergencies in the flower field and in the plumbing world that have to be attended to from time to time, and we do that. But it is a given that is our day of rest. I mean, thank goodness we have Sunday. I don't see how people that work on Sunday do it 7 days a week. It restores our soul, but so that keeps us, that's the day that we do a lot of reflecting on, why do we do this? And I can't recommend reflection enough on why are you doing this? Steve and I's goal is to be generous, to create a way for us to have that every day a week, to step away, but then in the big picture of how to head into retirement also in that way, and to be able to do it in a way that we enjoy it and can be generous with others. And that's a big part of the big picture, right? That's what drives us the other 6 days. And on Saturdays isn't really a hard work day. That's a day of projects and fun day and, day of doing things. So why am I in business is a part of our big picture snapshot. And then how do I get to my why is the next reason that that really helps us stay focused on that day-to-day business. Because, y'all, there are these constant sidebars that derail us. And I'll have to tell you this. So I recorded an interview last night with Amanda Montgomery, who was one of the co-founders of the collective River City Flower Exchange, along with Jonathan Lease of Springforth Farm. We were talking about both of them. Amanda's a co-founder at a collective, and Jonathan has sold through collectives for many years. And so we were talking about all of that. And one of those little rabbit holes that we can fall into that we don't even realize we fall into. Before we went live, Megan joined Jonathan. Megan is Jonathan's wife. joined on the Zoom call for us to chit chat because we're, friends and we wanted to catch up. And Megan was sharing how beneficial them kind of tweaking their business model to sell through the collectives 100% this year versus the way they've done it in the past. And she said, for instance, one thing that I hadn't realized how much, brain power and effort it takes is through all these years, they grow in several structures, and they have a really unique business model. If you haven't ever checked them out, they only sell basically March, April, and May. They literally shut their cut flower operation selling part down the end of May for a wonderful business model that fits their family when the highest demand is. Anyway, she said, for instance, one of the things that we've done for years is we had one commercial customer, that loved red anemones. However, they didn't really sell to the other customers. So they always grew them, not a lot, but they grew some for that one special customer. And you don't realize how much time and effort that little bit. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do things like that. I'm just saying that you reach a point where when you step back at 30,000 feet and look down and you're not doing that anymore because they're not doing that because of selling through collectives who that particular customer doesn't buy through, how much time that takes and how that relieves you. And Jonathan, when we were interviewing, went on to say that they have downsized their admin and their packing time like by over 75%. And I just had so much respect when he said, so we now have so much more family time. Instead of saying what I would have jumped in and said, so I have more time to think of something else to grow. It's all about perspectives, friends. It's all about stepping back and looking at the 30,000 foot view of your business. It just brings you back into perspective. And right now, if you're sitting on 3 times the amount of plantings than you had planned, I'm not saying that you can't be flexible with your plan. I'm saying you can be flexible as long as you're keeping your big picture in perspective, meaning you're not taking up the space that your very early, spring or your first summer recipe or your second summer recipe or your cool flower recipe needs to have space in very early fall to go into. You have to step back. This is one of those times where you could step back, sit down with a cup of coffee and spend 30 minutes thinking, all right, how am I doing? Give yourself a report card. That's a great idea, right? Just take a step back. No interference, no interruptions. Just lock yourself in the room with whatever your beverage of choice is, a cup of coffee, whatever, your afternoon energy drink. And just think, all right, so where are we on all this? A check-in. So the big picture look at a garden and your business. Or a business, not everybody's in this for the business, right? So friends, I hope that this kind of helped me take a step back. And I am still teetering on which way to go. We still have plenty of time to figure all this out. To me, it's a very exciting, challenging time, but that's what keeps all this interesting. And that's the thing. And then I'm going to end this. I've talked about how to deal with failures. The road to success is paved with failures. It's what you do with the failures that's super important. And remember that just because a mistake took you a long time to make, don't cling to a mistake just because it took you a long time to make it. That means if you learn today that something you've been doing is perhaps not the best fit for you, just push it aside and start over, start new, start afresh. And don't feel penalized or that you've wasted your time. It's all necessary, friends. You're talking to the champion of pushing stuff aside and then stomping on it and to get to the next step. Letting it go. If only we could be like dogs who forgive and forget, truly. All right, friends, if you want to learn more about the work of the Gardener's Workshop, we have tons of resources, both free and paid, over at thegardenersworkshop.com. I invite you to fall in over there. And, if you want to stay in the loop, we have a weekly farm newsletter that goes out, and it's basically a headliner. It has all of these different, everything that's happening on the farm, in business, what you can be planting, what's the latest and greatest. I invite you to sign up for that. And friends, this is an exciting time for flower farmers. The opportunities are bigger now than they've ever been, and we love bringing how you can reach out to those to you. And so, till we meet again, friends, ciao.